I said, who's next? Well, every morning at 4, for 2 months, I woke up and tried to decide what to do about James's condition and how to handle it. And then every morning at 4 for the last week, I've woken up and thought, what should I say? And I still didn't come to anything very conclusive. I woke up this morning thinking of a Matthew Arnold statement, which is one of the worst lines of poetry ever. It is, "Who propst in these bad days our minds?" And the answer to that was Marcus Aurelius, and at that point I thought, no, I think I'll get Ned Gallaway, a nice, sturdy Irishman to lean on, and he could come up here and prop me on these bad days. I want to thank everybody for being here. I don't want to belabor things too much. I have a few quick things I want to tell you. When you want to talk about what's unique about James, I think maybe the most unique thing is that after being given a diagnosis of glioblastoma, and after suffering a gradual decline, which ended in a precipitous and tumultuous decline, I never heard him complain once. He never felt sorry for himself. He never regretted it. He never expressed any sense that this was something that shouldn't have visited him. He simply kept having projects and plans and looking at the promise of life and affirming it as he always had. Every MRI that was good was a triumphant party, and there was never a complaint. And I think that's really unusual. He had a lot of humor. When Matthew and I visited him after his last surgery, he was eating breakfast, and Matthew went in with one of his wry comments and said, "The Lord works in mysterious ways." And James picked up the napkin on the tray and did this sort of white flag of surrender. And he went, "First wave, you can stop now." And then, "I've had enough." And then the third wave, "You'll wear yourself out." I can't capture his inflection. It was perfect. If you had staged it, it would have been the culminating, excellent speech that we wanted it to be. It was very, very funny, and Matthew and I really were collapsing with just absolutely funny. The last time he was in this room, it was solstice, and he wasn't well, and he was always happy to be here, and for some strange reason, he circled this auditorium in a way that was like 30 years ago. He moved very quickly and very gracefully. I thought he was above the ground. He really didn't touch the floor. A few weeks later, or a week later, my Uncle Fred died, and some of my relatives are here, and he did the same thing in that space. He had lost a little touch, I think, with where he was, but he strolled up and down the aisles of that church hall like he was, not even touching the earth anymore. These were his last visits to an auditorium and a school space or a church hall. And they were places where he was visiting like his spiritual self was visiting, not his physical. His energetic self was visiting, not his physical self. It was strange to watch him. I thought, where is he getting the strength? His back was bad, he wasn't well, and yet he drifted through these spaces like he wasn't even a physical presence anymore. It's very interesting to me in retrospect because I stood and stared at him, sort of amazed and sort of stressed. And now I realize that these were his last visits to these places. When he was at university hospitals, where, by the way, they told us the other night when Lee and I went to a little retreat where they invited us to talk on patient advocacy because I was a relentless advocate for them. They asked us to comment. When we came in, they said, "Well, he turned a lot of people on to Leonard Cohen." Really interesting. He was there 3 weeks and played it all night, every night, and that was a very funny thing. He loved it. When he was not in his full mastermind there, he would constantly want me to go out in the hallway and find the community of supporters. And I would think, oh my gosh, James, there really are no community of supporters out there in the hallway. But he always thought that somewhere right out the door and around the corner there was this community of supporters. And he would be happy to see so many of you here today because you really are members of his community. I'm talking too long. I'll skip a few things. He loved trees. He loved white blossoms. He loved this quote from Eliot. If you came this way, taking the route you would be likely to take from the place you would be likely to come from. If you came this way in Maytime, you would find the hedges white again in May with voluptuary sweetness. And finally, we had a theme song. Our little theme song for our dates, which we had occasionally when he was not well, was Lily Marlene, and I would always ask him, but who is Lily Marlene? Are you Lily Marlene or am I Lily Marlene? He would never answer. Once I asked him, I shouldn't tell this, but once I asked, I told everybody it's not that right. Once I said, James, did I ever really love you? And he said, oh, you were crazy about it. I think that made him Lily Marlene, not me. My love for you renews my might. I'm warm again. My pack is light. For you, Lily Marlene. It's you, Lily Marlene.
It's incredible that you asked me to come up with you today, Pauline. I appreciate that.
I thought I needed you.
Holy. I don't know. I don't think so. You know, I met James in June of 1996 in Beechwood. And it was just a few days after I had graduated from Ohio University School of Theater. Fresh, you know, I had bleached blonde hair. It was much longer. And Vince Cardinal set that meeting up. And little did I know that day what an incredible gift Vince had given me in meeting James Thornton and the impact he'd had on my life. Today, as part of a reflection, you know, and I know that Jamie will be able to talk about the ways he's touched people, but something occurred over the years that I got to teach with James here from 1996 to 2002, and I learned to really love education, what it meant to be an educator. And James Thornton was a master educator. I left Shaker to go to the University of Virginia, where I'm still working on a PhD in education. And they didn't teach me anything that James hadn't already taught me when it came to education. And I would tell that to James, and he wasn't all that surprised, really. He was just glad to know that Mr. Jefferson's University was going to give me a degree for everything he taught me. His ability to see potential in people has been mentioned. But when it comes to being an educator, his ability to coax that potential out in all of the people over all these years was really what made him a master educator. I want to get this quote right. I'm scripted. I've got my Yellow Barn Farm Retreat folder. This was the first packet of information James ever gave to me. I never discarded anything. And this was the first one. So I thought it would be nice to bring today. But Sir Ken Robinson, who's a renowned arts educator, has this quote. And he said, helping people connect with their personal creative capacities is the surest way to release the best they have to offer. And James knew that. He loved helping people connect to their creative capacities, regardless of the capacity, and he urged them, and he propelled some of you to go out in the world and share that offering. And I mean, what a legacy for young educators, for school systems throughout this whole country, to heed that, to give people a safe an encouraging environment to connect with their creative capacities, and then to urge them through an encouraging word to go out into the world and offer them. We all have that inner voice, that thing, that unique phrase that James said to us at some point, and it's different for each of us, that meant so much to get us going out there. I still hear him. He became my internal dialogue a long time ago. And Pauline, you're in there now too. It's very cool. But I still hear him saying things like, you know, Ned, you'll catch more flies with honey than you will with vinegar, and breathe, Ned. And Matt, I almost burst out loud when you talked about Can't Turn Back the Tide, and you mentioned that in the Grapefruit Moon song, because he would have leaned in and said, that's big. That's really big. It was big. A lot of funny moments have come back over. I was scripted. I'm going off script, but I'm going to stay off script because that was his way as well. But I do want to say that one moment has haunted me this past week, and it's really quite devastating. But in Ship of Dreams, and he built his Ship of Dreams on the farm docked at Grass Pond. But Tamar Underwood sat here on this stage with the sails flowing behind him, singing Tom Waits' "Shiver My Timbers." And what an incredible song. And in that song, one of the lines is, "My heart's in the wind." And James, I have him as my internal dialogue. We all know that he's passed physically, but he's going to be with us all still. And as Chloe Hill sang in Remembered Gate during the World War II segment, we'll all be seeing you in all those old familiar places because we know James's heart's in the wind. I miss him, but he's going to be with us for a long time. Thank you, Pauline.